No, you can't.
So, right, there's a reason why I'm showing you that, and that will become very clear very soon. So, I'll let that load up. So if you didn't already know, that was a scene from which movie?
X-Men.
X-Men. Right. So there's some Days of Future Past. We've got some real fans in the audience. So there's some interesting facts about that particular movie, and I'll sort of let the network catch up with me. I think the previous speaker also had some challenges with the network, but we'll sort of wait for it to come up. So that movie, interestingly, took a lot of effort to render. Now, who in the audience normally stays till the end of a movie to watch the credits roll? We've got sort of Android people, techie people in the room, so obviously you guys are going to stay right to the end. So there's something interesting. Let me see what's happening here. Connection, there it is. Let's see. Wait for this. I'll try the auditorium. See if I get lucky. Right, there we go. So that particular movie, so if you stay to the end of any credits, so you'll notice that there's a list of companies that do sort of VFX and rendering. And there's a few that have sort of approached Google and said, can you help us? We're having a significant problem with a backlog of movies, and we'd like you to help us sort of catch up. So that particular scene, sort of Magneto lifting the stadium, was actually rendered on Google infrastructure. So this is sort of the type of compute power that we're getting into, not just sort of hosting applications, not just sort of genomics and mobile backends. We're getting into some serious horsepower of computing required. We're talking 10, 20,000 cores, doing things like V-Ray, Maya, if anyone out there is sort of into the digital design and VFX space, or even sort of rendering space. That movie itself, some of the modeling was also done for the sort of villain robots in some of the scenes as well. So there were about 400 or so scenes that we were involved in, and we're talking serious amounts of data when it comes to sort of rendering these movies. The company is called Framestore. They're based in the UK, and we now have an interesting discussion with people like Marvel, and actually quite a few other movie studios about doing sort of large-scale rendering. We've sort of done stuff on Guardians of the Galaxy, and we've done things in Gravity. We did things in Gravity. So this is sort of the backlog of work that we've been working on behind the scenes. Some of this stuff we haven't been able to talk about in the past because clouds, sort of our Google Cloud hasn't been as sort of well known and as well sort of explained in the marketplace. But I think now we're sort of in a better position to talk about this. And as I mentioned, there are many other, not just movie, and this is where it becomes interesting, not just movie studios, but also rendering studios and VFX studios such as Blizzard, who, any sort of World of Warcraft players in the audience? I'm hoping you have we've got a couple. So Blizzard sort of have a huge amount of effort to also render some of the scenes in some of their cut scenes in some of their games, along with people like Supercell as well. So there's a lot going on in sort of this space, and I actually wanted to, because I'm sort of a movie buff, I wanted to start with that X-Men Days of Future Past thing. So I was sort of kindly introduced, and I just wanted to just mention that. So I've been based in the region for the last 5 years at Google. I have sort of IBM blood in me. I used to work for IBM, so it was a sort of a very hard sort of move that first week of having a real big headache, moving from something so sort of structured and protocols to go and sort of do what you want in not so many words. So the sort of the brunt of sort of what I want to cover today is about that platform I mentioned at the start around the usage and some of the use cases. And I'm going to, the competing session was about Gradle, so I'm going to have some Gradle at the end as well. So everybody here who sort of feels like they're going to miss out on that session is going to get a little bit, sort of a bit of Gradle as well. So most people are familiar, and you've probably heard 100 or so people talk at Google I/O and various Google events about Google services and sort of the scale and the capability and the capacity that we have. And you look at any of the sort of products, the big products that we have that that are out in the marketplace, they are sort of billion user real estate like properties that we have. YouTube on its own can sort of dwarf in terms of its requirements and systems any of the others, given that we upload something like 120 hours of YouTube footage every minute. It's like a ridiculous number of sort of content that we have to sort of get onto YouTube and then curate and the rest of it. And you can take any of the others there, Google Maps, you can take Chrome, very close to sort of getting into the sort of billion user mark for all of these. And what I want you to appreciate is the type of infrastructure that's required to be able to support this is, I would say, industry leading. There are no other companies sort of born in the cloud like Google who can support and will continue to support these types of properties and these types of products. And a lot of what we do at Google is, we try to make life a little bit easier. Yes, it's about organizing the world's information. Yes, it's about sort of making it more accessible. But it is about those small things that we sort of take for granted and the innovation that we like to include in most of these products. So, you take that sort of cloud platform, you take this high level of launch and iterate type philosophy that we have within the company, and you take some of the mantras that we have in terms of looking at problems from a really broad perspective, and you really come up with an environment where people are empowered to start coming up with really interesting ideas. One of those ideas, which is quite interesting, is cardboard. Who's come across cardboard? I think the GDGs have probably demoed this. The story behind cardboard is interesting because back in, I think, 2013, this is prior to Facebook acquiring a really interesting VR company called Oculus. Two of our engineers sat down and thought, well, wouldn't it be cool if we could provide a similar sort of virtual reality experience, but at sort of cardboard type cost? So they sort of put their heads together, wrote a bit of, wrote a basic prototype Android application. They built this thing in, I think, in a matter of 4 or 5 weeks. The idea that you can use your phone to provide the visual interface. At the end, I'll let you have a play of this because I've got a couple of new applications that let you sort of experience this. Built the applications, decided that would be good enough for a 20% project within Google, and they've really taken off in terms of now having sort of commercial discussions with people like Disney. So imagine anybody been to Disney World in Paris or in Florida? Even if you haven't gone, please go, because it's like a mind-bending experience, even for an adult. I mean, I took my 2 kids, and it was, I'd probably want to stay there for, a whole month to try and experience as much as we can. But the idea of using this in theme parks prior to people getting on rides to get an experience is quite interesting. And there are many sort of other use cases that we've come up with in terms of virtual reality. And obviously, Facebook wouldn't have bought someone like Oculus if they didn't think there was some sort of movement or traction in that space. So I wanted to highlight that within Google, we, this notion of innovation and really trying to do as much as we can in terms of mobile development, innovation, and also utilizing the platform, that sophisticated platform that we have. And we can sort of go into the inner details behind how it works and the rest of it, but I'll save that to the end if someone wants to have a play. So the actual cloud part of Google sits under Google for Work. So this is sort of like the 50,000-foot view of the business which Google started back in 2004, and more recently has started to really reinvent things like Google Drive, Chromebooks. Who's got a Chromebook? I can see a lot of Macs, and I have a Mac, obviously. So people have Chromebooks, so this is sort of the movement behind not just software as a service and sort of having a platform, but also having devices that can connect to the platform. And then also, I have to keep checking myself, Android for Work, which is something we've announced and you're probably going to hear more about at Google I/O. We acquired a company called Divide, which allows you to use your Android device from a personal perspective and from a work perspective, and there's a clear delineation of sort of user access rights that you'll be able to switch on and switch off based on having one single device. I don't know if you guys have looked into Divide, but it's a very interesting acquisition for us, and you're going to hear more about Android